Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Everybody sing!
Oh, give me a home where my cattle can roam for free while others must pay. Where now all that's heard are encouraging words for militias arriving today. Home, home on the range, where Fox News and Hannity play, where the right wing is heard and the gun nuts are stirred, getting crazier each broadcast day. Now thanks to the right, public land is a blight. You can really just take it by force. We're loaded and locked. I'm a rancher half-cocked. My rights, they exceed those of yours. Now sometimes at night, when the cable glows bright, I think about the wild creatures too. But that's gone in a burst. Private sector is first. Take your laws and your rules and screw you.
Oh, yeah! Home, home on the range,
where Fox News and Hannity play, where the right wing is heard and the gun nuts are stirred, getting crazier each broadcast day. Look at that moon. I think the feds had something to do with that moon.
Oh, of course they did. The feds had something to do with that moon. The feds. All right, welcome to the Friday edition of the Randi Rhodes Show. As Randy would say, it's Friday, you bastards! Yeah, I'm not bouncing the boobies because only Randy can bounce the boobies. Okay, I can probably bounce along with the best of them, but that's Randy's thing. So next Friday, Randy will bounce the boobies with you. Okay, but welcome to it, the Randi Rhodes Show. I'm Nicole Sandler of RadioOrNot.com. And that little gem that we opened today's show with came courtesy of a comic, a cartoonist named Mark Fiore. He's at markfiore.com. And, these days it's not enough to just be like a cartoonist. Now you got to make videos and sing, too. And maybe he should just stick to making the videos and let someone else do the singing. That was kind of painful.
Mark's a very nice guy. He's a good cartoonist.
He's a great cartoonist.
Oh, yeah, he's a great cartoonist. But, yeah, his singing...
It sounds like what Clive Bundy would sound like if he sang. So, okay.
He was accurate.
He was accurate. And it gave me a giggle or two. And that's good, because I think today we're going to need some giggles. Or at least I will. Look, I am... today's really bittersweet for me because it is my final day filling in for Randi Rhodes, and I've been honored to do this for the last 4.5 years. Actually, the first time I ever guest hosted Randi's show was on my 50th birthday. She and I had occasion to talk on the phone. We had a great conversation, and Randi has always been very supportive. And, it's funny because people think that, like, we're great friends. Actually, I've only met Richie and I have only met in person once, and it was at a radio convention thing in New York. I want to say, 4 or 5 years ago or more. Maybe it was before I ever did her show. I'm not sure. But, no, it was after I started, now that I'm thinking about it. There's a little video I put together, by the way, of that meeting. I put it up on YouTube. I called it something like When Progressive Talk Hosts Collide, because there was Tom Hartman, there was Alan Colmes, there was, do you remember Jack Rice? Jack Rice was there, Stephanie Miller, Randi, me, and some of the, the significant others were there too. Howard makes a cameo. So it's kind of cool, and I actually posted it on the Randi Rhodes message board today. I started a new topic, and then, of course, afterwards I saw someone already had a similar topic. So you guys might want to combine the two. But it was something like, pay tribute to Randi, give her thanks, because look, I want her to have something to take with her. I'm sure she's already got thousands and thousands and thousands of emails. But so I started a little topic on the Randi Rhodes message board at randyrhodes.com. With my little tribute. I've got an email list, over at radioornot.com, and I sent something out to the people on my list on Sunday, just paying tribute to her. So I copied and pasted it in there, and then embedded the video that I put. It's like a 30-second long video of the one and only time we met. But see, that's the thing. Even though I've only met Randi in person once, I do feel like she's a dear, dear friend. And as I said in that email, in that post, she's, you might not think that modest is the word to describe Randi, but it really is. She does things to help others quietly. She doesn't brag about those things. She has come through for me, certainly on more than one occasion, and in a big way. Even aside from giving me the honor, the privilege of sitting at her microphone. For a radio host, somebody especially like Randi, who has built this following, who has earned the respect and the devotion of fans over the course of many years, you guys, the audience, you are the most precious thing to her. And when you have somebody, filling in for you, you want to know that you can trust that person to not abuse the privilege, as it were, not to offend your listeners. And I'll tell you something, Randi, we differ on a few things, not many things. We're pretty closely aligned in our attitudes, in our ideology. But then sometimes, we differ. We disagree on certain things. And never once in 4.5 years has she ever told me what to say, what not to say, what topics to cover or to stay away from. She has given me free rein. And I think that's because, she trusted me. And I got to tell you, that trust is... I'm so honored by it. I want to repay the favor somehow, and someday I think I will. Randi helped me out once in a big, big way, and it's between the two of us. I'm not going to go into details, but when I thanked her profusely, she said, "Look, don't worry about it." She said, when you have it, you give it. When you need it, you take it. And that's the way she is, And I think, look, I don't know for sure this week. I know Randi had family plans, and it was a big deal to get, Howard's kids and Jessica and the whole family together. But knowing that she only had a month left, she could have said, you know what, that week that we already decided you're going to fill in, I'm going to be there. I really think part of the decision was, she knew that losing this gig is going to impact me, and she cares about other people, and I think it comes through. It comes through with everything she does. So, we got a lot of territory to cover today. We got some great guests lined up. But I think in the third hour, I would like to be able to, let you guys call in. Well, you can call in any time, of course, 866-87-RANDI. But in the third hour, I really want to take some time and maybe just, talk about some of our favorite memories of the Randi Rhodes Show. So if you have any story, or maybe the first time you heard Randi, or something that, you want to share, bring it. Today's a good day to do that. Because you know what? I think when Randi's here, and I don't know, Sean, you work with her in the studio every day. I never have.
Yep.
I think she gets a little humble. I think when people call and he prays on her, sometimes she'll move it along. And I think it's because, like a lot of radio people, we got into radio, I think, because you can be anonymous. You can to some degree, right? You can talk on the radio, but then when you go out, you're not immediately recognizable. I know Randi is shy. I happen to be shy when I meet people in person. So I think she gets a little, when people are heaping praise on you, although it feels good, it's like, what do you say? Thank you.
She's a great person. I have had an absolute blast working with her for most of the last 4 years. So it's awesome. So we can do that in the third hour.
We'll do that in the third hour.
If there's any questions that you guys have that you want to ask about, behind the scenes stuff,
today's the day to do it.
Time to do it.
Right. So we've left the third hour open for that. We'll have some fun and share some memories and pay tribute to the goddess of radio. All right. But let me tell you what's coming up. This week, if you had to look back on the week just gone by, right, that's ending today, I think the two biggest stories are the rearing the ugly head of racism. My goodness. You know, for years now, we've dealt with the dog whistles, right? The dog whistle racism coming from Fox News and right-wing hate talk radio and Republican politicians, frankly, right? But it seems like in the last couple of weeks, the dog whistle has gone away, and it's just been blatant, in-your-face, you know, full-on, no-holds-barred racism, right? And so one person that I love talking to, I've gotten to interview him many times over the years, and he's always thought-provoking and insightful. His name is Tim Wise, and he's known as an anti-racist speaker, author, and activist. Tim Wise will join us in just in the next segment, well, in the segment after the bottom of the hour, to talk about what the hell is going on in racist America in 2014. The other big story, of course, is the Great Divide, right? A divided America, the haves and the have-nots, the 1% and the 99%, right? Now, today we got some good economic news. The jobs report, 288,000 jobs added in March. I'm sorry, in April, and the unemployment rate has now fallen to its lowest point since September 2008, when when everything went bad, right? When everything crashed, 6.3%. That's good news. But the bad news is we still have the most, probably the biggest divide between the haves and the have-nots in the industrialized world. I mean, we really are becoming not only an oligarchy and plutocracy headed towards fascism, but really like a third world country, right? Where you got the very, very wealthy and everybody else who's just struggling and scraping to get by. So one of my favorite journalists, writers on that subject, David K. Johnston, Pulitzer Prize-winning author, by the way, reporter, has a new book out, and it's coincidentally called Divided, The Perils of Our Growing Inequality, and he'll join us in the next hour. So those two great guests, and the phone lines are open at 866-87-RANDY, 866-877-2634. Nicole Sandler in for Randi Rhodes.
One of the Supreme Court justices, you told him just knock it in.
That's right.
Sitting up there pretending that now racism don't exist.
And there's Clarence Thomas.
Oh, y'all, brother. Oh, brother. You said that, I did.
Yeah.
Now, it's hard to understand what he said there, so we'll get to it in a second. Welcome back to the Randi Rhodes Show. I'm Nicole Sandler, in for Randi one last time today. And that was Democratic Congressman Benny Thompson of South Carolina on a radio show last weekend. It was actually the New Nation of Islam radio show. Now, I'm actually surprised the right-wing crazies haven't gone nuts over the fact that this congressman appeared on the New Nation of Islam radio show. But instead, they were all up in arms over what Benny Thompson said. And you couldn't hear it clearly there because it broke up.
He's from Mississippi.
Oh, he's from Mississippi. I'm sorry. He is from Mississippi. I knew that. Thank you for the correction. And so you couldn't really hear it, but they got it. What Benny Thompson said is that he thought Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice, is an Uncle Tom. Well, oh boy, they went nuts. And so yesterday, Dana Bash of CNN caught up with Congressman Thompson in the halls of Congress.
Clarence Thomas saying that he was an Uncle Tom. What did you mean by that?
Well, if you look at his decisions on the court, they have been adverse to the minority community, and the people I represent have a real issue with an African American not being sensitive to those issues.
Calling him an Uncle Tom, though, isn't that a racially charged term?
For some it is, but to others it's the truth.
Because, looking at that and hearing that kind of language, that certainly wouldn't be, appropriate if it was coming from somebody who was white.
But I'm black.
That makes it okay?
Well, I mean, you asked me the question, and I'm giving you the response.
Mm-hmm.
The people that I represent, for the most part, have a real issue with those decisions. Voter ID, affirmative action, the Affordable Care Act. All those issues are very important. And for someone in the court who's African American and not sensitive to that is a real problem.
It is a real problem. And, you know, the term Uncle Tom, I guess, is a racially charged term. But you know what I say? If the shoe fits, you know, you can go to urbandictionary.com. And the Urban Dictionary definition of Uncle Tom is a black man who will do anything to stay in good standing with the white man, including betray his own people. And I would say I believe that that's Clarence Thomas. I think he is an abomination of a Supreme Court justice. Horrible. Unqualified and just undignified on the bench. Just his record of lying, of holding back information on the financial disclosure forms that they're supposed to fill out, and deciding to just exclude the six-figure salary his wife got for being a lobbyist working against the Affordable Care Act. A blatant conflict of interest there, but did Justice Clarence Thomas recuse himself from the case, hearing the challenge to the constitutionality of the Affordable Care Act? No, because that would have been the right thing to do, right? On every front, this man is an abomination. But during that radio show, Congressman Benny Thompson of Mississippi said some other things, including he said the treatment of this president, the way the Republicans have treated him, is also due to racism.
You believe that some of the opposition, maybe even much of the opposition to the president, is because of the color of his skin?
I've been here a long time, and I've seen a lot of issues come before Congress. I've never seen the venom put forth on another president like I've seen with this president, and that's my opinion.
And are there specific things that people have said that are racially tinged that make you say that, or you think it's just you're just reading the tea leaves of what's going on?
I've seen quite a few State of the Union messages. I've never heard a president called a liar in a State of the Union message.
Do you think, Congressman Wilson, that was race-based?
Well, no. I've never heard it before. I mean, it was a stupid statement, but it has no real bearing there.
Right, and they wouldn't do that, I'm sorry, to even Bill Clinton. Oh, and as for Mitch McConnell?
Mitch McConnell saying that his comments were racist.
Well, it had nothing to do with that. The comments were insensitive. To say to a president that you're going to oppose anything that he puts up is just totally...
But you think it was race-based?
Well, I've never heard it said to any other president.
That's right. You know, just look at how this president has been treated by, members of Congress who happen to be Republicans. They didn't treat Bill Clinton like that. Have you ever seen, this kind of treatment of a president in history? I don't think so. We're going to talk about race with Tim Wise. Coming up next. If you've never heard Tim Wise speak on race, you need to listen. Nicole for Randy. We'll be right back.
There's more cholera in America than there is racism. Racism is over!
All right. So Jon Stewart said that facetiously, and Ann Coulter, I guess she was serious, right? More cholera in America than there is racism. Yeah, sure. But, that's the opposite world in which they live over at Fox. Welcome back to the Randi Rhodes Show, the Friday edition. I'm Nicole Sandler of RadioOrNot.com. As always, honored to be in for Randy today. And honored to speak with our next guest. I'll tell you, every time I speak with Tim Wise, I think I've learned something, and my eyes are opened a little wider. Tim Wise is a speaker, an author, an activist on racism. He's an anti-racist speaker, author, activist with 7 books to his credit, including White Like Me, Reflections on Race from a Privileged Son, and like I said, 6 others. And Tim, thank you so much for joining me today on the Randi Rhodes Show.
Thanks for having me.
What a week this has been, or I should say 2 weeks. I mean, really, have you seen such blatant in-your-face, forget the dog whistles and stuff, just blatant in-your-face, no-holds-barred racism in a long time?
Probably not since the height of the Tea Party rallies in 2009,
right.
I guess. But I mean, in other respects, it's sort of par for the course. These kinds of overt examples of racist bigotry bubble up from time to time. What I think is still very disturbing, though, is that, once again, we as a country apparently are capable, and I guess this is good news, but we're capable of getting really bent out of shape at the expression of overt and obvious racist ignorance, but we ignore the day-to-day stuff. We ignored Donald Sterling for years.
Right.
Here's a guy with a history of racist behavior, not just words, but actual treatment, the blatant discrimination against black and Latino renters in his slumlord apartments that he had in and around Los Angeles. He paid the biggest fine in the history of any housing discrimination case ever brought by the Justice Department. But I guess breaking the Fair Housing Act of 1968 allows you to remain an NBA owner in good standing. It's only when you insult Magic Johnson and other, not so poor and more powerful black folks that all of a sudden, it becomes a financial liability, and so they decide to take action. Now, the action they took was appropriate, but it's also many, many years overdue, and I think it just goes to show that, we're as a nation, we're very hypocritical about racism. We want to put on a very nice face, and so when someone says something really blatant, we all go, oh, my God, that's terrible. That's not the America that we're in, and yet, sadly, it is the America that we're in. It's just that most people, have a filter that apparently Donald Sterling lacks.
Right. Well, but, here's the thing. I agree with everything you said, Tim, except here's what because there was a recording, because we got to hear him say those horrible things. I mean, unimaginable, you can't even conceive that someone would actually say that to another person. Like, you can sleep with them, just don't bring them to my games, don't take pictures with them and post them online. Really? Because that audio was played all over the place, and now the average person who had never heard of Donald Sterling before went, oh my God, did you hear that tape? Where even if we had seen it in writing, it would have been probably not as shocking.
Well, I think that's probably true, but I think, there are also a lot of other times that we've been able to catch discriminatory behavior on tape. There's that TV show, What Would You Do, and it's a relatively popular show. They've actually done quite a few good segments about racism where they're pretty blatant examples of disparate treatment of people of color relative to whites. But, none of that stuff becomes a media sensation, right. Even though I guess it gets pretty good ratings. We don't actually sort of lose a lot of sleep over that. It doesn't become a huge story when black folks are, they set up one example I remember where a black kid was, quote unquote, stealing a bike. Of course, it was really an actor. And then they had another part of the segment where it was a white female. And
the people helped her do it, right? People were I saw that.
Steal the bike, right? And you'd think, granted, it's a news show that gets a decent amount of coverage, but it doesn't get anywhere near this. And I think it's more the fact that it's this celebrity component. It's here's a white guy who makes millions and millions of dollars off disproportionately the labor of black men saying these things about black men, which does make it especially, I guess, ironic and pathetic and incredibly insulting. But I just wish that we as a country would be as exorcised and as upset about these less blatant. And the NBA, look, the NBA knew about Donald Sterling's housing discrimination stuff several years back, a decade ago. There's no way they couldn't have. Elgin Baylor knew about it. Other folks in the NBA knew about it, and they didn't take action. So even if we can say, well, the reason it didn't become a media firestorm when he did that stuff against black and Latino renters was because there was no tape, the NBA certainly could have done something because he's violating the Fair Housing Act. You would think that would probably run afoul of the NFL sort of bylaws, and NBA bylaws about what the league is going to stand for.
Right. And then, of course, let's look at the other big story in the last couple of weeks. We got the Cliven Bundy thing, which, he was the poster boy on the Sean Hannity show. They deified him. Look, we're standing up for your freedom by breaking the law and pulling guns on federal agents. But, this guy is shown. And then he said, then there's tape of, first came a report that Cliven Bundy went on a racist tirade. And, boy, the post initially, like on Facebook and Twitter, from all the defenders of him were like, yeah, well, I don't believe you. Let me see it. And then the tape came out. Let me tell you what I know about the Negro. And now, all of a sudden now there's outrage. Again, this is, people are finally verbalizing this stuff where for a couple of years, it's been a lot of dog whistles. We've heard a lot of, the inner city lazy people who can't find work, those kind of things. Let me ask you my theory, because I wonder, great, here's Donald Sterling. He's being banned for life from the NBA and all that. Good, glad, too late, but glad it's finally happening. But then there's people on TV and on radio every day who say horribly racist things. I look at Rush Limbaugh. I look at Glenn Beck. I look at, all the people on the Fox so-called news channel and wonder, if the average racist person sitting at home who's been, kind of hiding it under the blanket, kind of, and now they hear all these people on the public airwaves doing it, and are they emboldened by that? There's no consequences being paid by any of these people.
Well, I'm quite sure they are, but I think really, it does again go to show that, you can do dog whistle stuff, or you can beat around the bush, but allude very clearly to black folks, as Paul Ryan did when he talked about, this so-called inner city work ethic,
right,
and swore he wasn't thinking about black people, which is just not credible. I mean,
Nope.
It's just not credible. Or you can say things that are incredibly blatant. And I think one thing we can say about our country, and this is good, I don't mean to sound cynical, but is that, we've gotten to the point where overt expressions of bigotry are pretty much unacceptable vis-a-vis peoples of color, and that's a good thing, I suppose. It certainly wasn't the case 50 years ago, 100 years ago. So, pat on the back for the U.S. We've made that much progress. But the problem is that those dog whistles are still denied. And look, think about Cliven Bundy. I mean, here's a guy whose fundamental statement, right, which was, social welfare programs have basically made blacks worse off than slavery. As absurd as that is, as absurd and ridiculous as it is, that is one of the fundamentally most common things you hear mainstream conservatives say all the time. I mean, they make the same argument. They actually, I was taping a show earlier today on CNN, and Jamel Bowie was on, the author, and he was talking about, last year, I think it was, he mentioned that there was this documentary film that did very well among conservative audiences called Runaway Slave. And this was a film that basically paints the entirety of the social welfare state as a plantation created by liberals to essentially enslave black people.
Yeah.
And so it's this idea that, the government is worse now for blacks than it was when it literally allowed them to be owned as property. And as I mentioned on the show this morning, it's fundamentally, obviously, ignorant of history, but it's also ignorant of the present, because currently, and I ask my audiences this on the road all the time, I ask them, what percentage of African-American adults do you believe receive cash assistance from the government on a monthly basis? And usually the answers will be 10%, 20%, 30%. Many people even say, as many as half. The actual answer is 1.2%. Wow. There are 350,000, approximately, black adults in this country who are receiving cash, quote-unquote, welfare. That's out of 28.5 million black adults in all. 350,000 on that particular program that folks normally think of when they think of quote-unquote welfare. So how in the world can we not only make this ignorant comparison with the actual ownership of human beings and all that entails, when only an infinitesimal percentage of people even receive this so-called benefit? So this is ignorant both of history and the current reality, but sadly we have allowed this kind of tripe to be said, not by the Cliven Bundys of the world, because doddering old ranchers are really not our problem in this country, but by people who actually have significant influence over the national narrative and the debate about social programs, about taxation, about spending, about what government does and doesn't do.
You're so right, and it's not only the Cliven Bundys, and I think again those kind of people who sit watching Fox all day get it from Republican members of Congress. My former Congressman Alan West has said it. That it has likened it to slavery. Sarah Palin has. Because they just repeat those talking points that they're given by Heritage Foundation or Tea Party Express or you name it, and it keeps going. So Tim. Again, we're speaking with Tim Wise. He's an anti-racist speaker, author, activist, 7 books. You can find his website, timwise.org. Follow him on Twitter, @TimJacobWise. Yesterday there was an uproar because somebody found a tape of a radio show that Congressman Benny Thompson of Mississippi did over the weekend, in which he said he said Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice, is an Uncle Tom. And he also said that the reason the Republicans treat Barack Obama so badly is because he's black. I believe that. There's a black man in the White House, and they can't handle it. And he also said Mitch McConnell is racist. Well, oh, my goodness. Heads are exploding all over, the Republican halls of Congress. But did he say anything wrong?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I don't think as a white person it's really for me to chime in or for any white person to really get involved in whether or not it's right to call a black person an Uncle Tom. To me, that's a term that black folks got to decide if they're going to use that.
And this is an African-American congressman.
Right, and he is. So that I think is, really for him to decide. I will say this. I mean, I think one thing we have to understand is whether or not it's a good idea to, as Jamel Bowie said on the show this morning when we were taping for CNN, to police the borders of blackness, whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing. The one thing that I said, and I'd say again, is, when you spend your entire judicial career ruling against over and over again the successes of the civil rights struggle, when you vote to weaken the Voting Rights Act, one of the greatest pieces of legislation in this country's history, when you do that over and again, when you vote to eliminate or severely restrict the very kinds of affirmative action programs that you yourself, meaning Clarence Thomas, acknowledge you benefited from, you really can't be shocked and appalled and surprised when other black folks, not just Benny Thompson, but his constituents, most of them African American, who feel that way about you. It doesn't mean the term is the one that maybe is the best to use. Again, I would not use that as a white person against a black person, no matter how much I disagreed with them. But I think that we have to understand that this guy has a history of voting in ways that the overwhelming majority of black folks in the entirety of the civil rights community, going back 50 years, find appalling. As far as the statement about opposition to Obama being entirely about race. I've never said it quite that way. My argument has always been, however, that over the last 40 years, any attempt to do anything vis-a-vis government, whether it's health care, whether it's any type of jobs initiative or economic stimulus, the government doing anything to help average everyday folks has been increasingly rejected by particularly white Americans, and the direct relationship between that and the racialization of who they think the beneficiaries are is the primary reason why that opposition has grown. 80 years ago, 70 years ago, 60 years ago, big government was very popular with white people. Of course, back then, pretty much the only people who could benefit from big government and jobs programs and all of those things were white. As soon as people of color began to gain access to the programs that white folks had already had access to since the 30s, that's when all of a sudden we discovered our inner libertarian and decided that we were against government. So I think it's deeper than the president being black. I think there is this increasing racialization of social policy. And so any president, but particularly a black president, who seeks to do something like a health care reform or like the stimulus bill or any of those things is going to be race-baited in a way that a white president would not. We know, for instance, Bill Clinton proposed health care reform that was at least as thoroughgoing as the one we ended up with. And prior to the election of Barack Obama, there was an interesting survey where they actually sat down white voters and showed them, not telling them whose plan it was. They showed a group of white voters this health care plan, like a 10-point plan, and it was Obama's plan. But they told them it was Bill Clinton's plan, from 1993. And overwhelmingly, the white folks supported this plan, like 2-1. Then a group that was demographically identical to that first group, so they would have very similar views ideologically, very same party affiliation, similar education, were shown the same 10-point plan, and they were told it was Obama's plan, and overwhelmingly 2-1 they rejected it, right? So the very same plan looked at by white folks who were demographically, ideologically similar, and yet they come to two totally different positions based on who the president is. I would suggest that that is because of the presumption, which the right has stoked for many years, that, social policy disproportionately helps black people, and that's what's going to happen if it's a black guy doing it, right? So it's the combination of him being a person of color, but also the way that social programs of any kind have been so intensely racialized over the last 40 to 50 years in general.
Right. No, I hear you. It's also an issue of, changing demographics. Soon, white people are going to be the minority in this country, and this freaks them out. The good news is I think a lot of this is generational, and many of those, Clive and Bundys and Donald Sterlings are going to die soon. And, I read, Tim Wise, your Facebook page and how you proudly write about your kids and your fourth grader who got into a great discussion with with you about the meaning of Sojourner Truth's, famous essay.
That was the sixth grader.
Oh, that was the sixth grader. Still, that's pretty damn cool. I think kids get it. And so the outlook, at least in that case, is kind of rosy. Tim, I got to run. It is always a pleasure talking with you. Tim Wise, find him at timwise.org. Read this guy's work. It's great. Thank you so much, Tim.
All right, thanks, Nicole.
Bye-bye. All right, we'll take a break. Come back with your calls on The Randi Rhodes Show. I'm Nicole Sandler. We'll be right back. Randy will be back on Monday for the final 2 weeks. So this is going to be must-hear radio. I know I'll be glued to the radio for the hours that she's on. Well, as I usually am listening. But, yeah. All right, Randy, back here Monday. Nicole Sandler today in for Randy. And let's go to the phones. Bill. Bill in St. Petersburg, Florida, listening online. Hi.
Hello. Hi, Nicole. How you doing?
Doing okay.
That's excellent. I just wanted to respond to the Clarence Thomas where that he was called an Uncle Tom.
Yeah.
And I had a response to you earlier. You said you guys couldn't speak on it, not being black, but I can because I am.
Okay.
It's a very old reference.
Oh, of course. Right.
I think it was mentioned in Uncle Tom's Cabin, and, of course, it's in the black community. It literally is a label for somebody who is preferential to the white superclass.
Right. It is a black person who is either is or is perceived as doing anything, to mollify the white man, often at the expense of his fellow African Americans, right? I mean, that's how I take it. And I'll tell you, look, I wouldn't say it, but there is an African American congressman who did, and I think it was perfectly okay. You?
For a congressman, no. Reason being in the public, it's like dancing through a minefield. It's going to blow up all over the place. People are going to say, "Oh, he's a public figure."
Yeah, but you know what? I hear people in the media say more heinous things on a daily basis, and that's okay. It's okay for Glenn Beck to say Barack Obama is a racist. He has a deep-seated hatred for white people. But this congressman can't point out that the only African American sitting on the Supreme Court has done things that are horrible for his fellow African Americans? Just a real disconnect there. Bill, I'm sorry, we're up against the clock and I got to run, but thank you for the call. Nicole for Randy, more of your calls after the break.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
A fellow Democrat, a fellow Southern colleague, Vinnie Thompson, has called Clarence Thomas a, quote, Uncle Tom. He doubled down on that again yesterday, suggested Mitch McConnell was a racist, said a lot of really inflammatory things. Does that cause you any concerns?
No, I think Benny Thompson, as you know, is a very close friend. Ben and I knew each other for 20 years before we ever came to Congress.
You think it's all right to be calling the Supreme Court
all of us,
Uncle Tom?
All of us have ways of expressing our disappointments. I am very disappointed in Clarence Thomas.
Do you think he's an Uncle Tom?
Well, I don't know.
You don't know if the Supreme Court Justice is an Uncle Tom?
Well, he's not the only Supreme Court Justice there now. We have 9 of them.
But he's the only one that's been called an Uncle Tom. I think that's an extraordinary insult.
Well, that may be, and you have to ask Benny Thompson about that. As you know, there are certain words and phrases I do not use, but I am, and I will never back away from this. I'm extremely disappointed. Joe, we come to the Congress, or we go to these appointments, and we're all to bring to those bodies our experiences to help broaden the application of justice in this country.
Clarence Thomas has had an experience of being genuinely Southern and being proudly black, just like you, and his experience led him to a different philosophy about government, and I don't know that he should be castigated because his experience as a black American is different from Vinnie Thompson's experience as a black American. Can't we disagree with each other without insulting each other and calling each other names?
Sure we can. And I talked to someone yesterday who told me that they were highly insulted by some of the expressions that Clarence Thomas has made in his writings, in his opinions. A lot of African Americans find his opinions very insulting.
All right,
but he has a right to that.
Benny Thompson, though, so you have no problems with him calling him Uncle Tom?
Well, Benny Thompson's a very close personal friend.
Right.
We don't always use the same words and phrases.
Is Mitch McConnell, do you think, is Benny Thompson thinks
Enough
Mitch McConnell?
already.
I don't know you don't have many about that.
All right.
Ask him about that, right?
I'm just...
Around in circles.
I'm not going around in circles.
Yes, it is time to wrap.
Yeah, it's time to wrap. Yeah, it took Mika Brzezinski to step in and say, enough already. Morning jerk, Morning Joe, why he's on MSNBC, I have no idea. By the way, welcome back to the Randi Rhodes Show. I'm Nicole Sandler. So this morning, I wake up early. I get up at like 6 o'clock because I have a teenager who does not wake up, and I've got to wake her up. I've got to go in there like 4 or 5 times before she gets out of bed. So I've got to get myself up much earlier than normal. So anyway, I wake up and there's nothing else on at 6. So I turn on the TV, and every day I say, why do I subject myself to this? So I turn on the TV this morning, and there's Congressman Jim Clyburn. I mean, and that's what he's got a new book out. It sounds great. In fact, he even talks about the time, I guess the book opens with him relating the story of after the 2008 primary that Hillary Clinton lost to Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton called him, yelling at him, how did this happen? And so that was kind of interesting. And instead of talking about the book and his stories, Joe Scarborough asked Jim Clyburn, berates him for almost 3 minutes about his colleague, Representative Benny Thompson of Mississippi, calling Clarence Thomas and Uncle Tom and saying that Mitch McConnell's a racist. Really, Jim Clyburn didn't say it. I guess, he said, your fellow Southern congressman. I guess Southern is the code word for black. And he went on and on. I wish, what I should have done is just edited the clip and pulled out every time jerk over there, morning joke, Joe, said to, was that okay? Do you think he's an Uncle Tom? Do you think he's a racist? Do you think that's appropriate? I mean, enough already. It's not him. But I guess he thought, all those black congressmen think alike. Unreal. Hey, MSNBC, what the hell are you doing? There's enough right-wingers on the television in the morning. We really don't need it on MSNBC, too. All right, had to get that out there. Yeah, it's just frustrating. All right, the number is 866-87-RANDY, 866-877-2634. And, the subject of the blatant racism that has infected the halls of Congress really segues nicely into the subject we're going to get into this hour, and that is this divided America. The rich and the rest of us, the haves and the have-nots, the 1% and the 99%. We saw the Senate Republicans earlier this week filibuster the vote to open debate on raising the minimum wage. This is what the U.S. Senate is supposed to do. They're supposed to debate the issues of importance. And now, thanks to C-SPAN, we can all watch it. But no, 41 out of the 42 Republicans in the U.S. Senate said, nah, we don't even want to talk about it. It doesn't matter that 70% or more of Americans believe it's time to raise the minimum wage. They say no. You know why? Because their big money benefactors don't want it. Because, the billions and trillions of dollars they're hoarding isn't enough for them. We need to start calling these people out for the thieves and the crooks they are. They say, you can look at whether it's Mitt Romney or Paul Ryan or any of those on the right, the makers and the takers, the job creators. They say the job creators are the makers. Excuse me. No, those big corporate owners, the 1%ers, they're the ones out on the golf course. They're the ones out, on their yacht in the middle of the ocean going to, Monaco or wherever, while the workers, the makers, the actual makers are slaving away on the job, in many cases for minimum wage. We need to take back the vernacular. We need to control the dialogue. You also need to vote, but, we'll get there. But the thing is, with this divide, the people who are working, sweating, they come home, they come home tired, take a shower and then oftentimes head out again to work a second or third job. Those are the makers. Don't let them tell you you're a taker. We're the ones working our asses off, our fingers to the bone, trying to scrimp together enough money so we can, pay the rent, pay the electric bill, feed our kids and clothe them, and in the winter, keep them from freezing to death, while they take advantage of our hard work and hoard the money because they don't want to give you any extra. And to make matters worse, you look at, say Walmart, for example, the Walton family. Those people have more money than they'll ever be able to spend in a lifetime, but they want more and more and more. And they are taking money from you, even you who vote Republican and you're listening secretly to Randy's show because you know she's telling the truth. Yes, even you, because what they do is they're actually telling their employees who can't make ends meet on the measly wages that they pay them, how to take advantage of government subsidies. Yeah, this is corporate welfare. Right? Because their workers have to go on food stamps and other forms of assistance in order to get by, in order to make it to the end of the month. And we pay for that. We are subsidizing their bad wages. Google the movie, The High Cost of Low Wages. You can find it online. I'm sure it's there for free. The High Cost of Low Wages. My daughter used to always want to go to Walmart because it was cheap. And I purposely, one day I knew she was lurking around, and I put the movie on. I had it on the DVR, and she, she was like half listening. She was in the kitchen making something, and, she could see the TV from there. And, she was paying attention. Well, I got to tell you, this was the best thing. We were in the car the other day. We were driving, David and I were driving Allison and a friend of hers, I don't know, somewhere to a party, wherever. And the friend said something, well, we can go to Walmart and get it. And Allison said, oh, no, I won't go to Walmart. My heart just I was so proud, it's getting through. That's what happens. And I said she's 15. Actually, she'll be 15 tomorrow. Oh, how time flies. All right. So anyway, the racism subject segues into the subject of this wealth inequality we have in this country. And it's horrible. And joining us in about 20 minutes or so, David K. Johnston, the Pulitzer Prize winning journalist whose articles you can read all over the place, who has a new book that's actually a collection of articles from Elizabeth Warren to other like economists and people you don't know, all about this divide. In fact, the book is called Divided, The Perils of Our Growing Inequality. So we'll talk with David K. Johnston in a little bit. But let's first go back to the phones at 866-87-RANDY, 866-877-2634. I'm Nicole Sandler, in for Randi Rhodes. David in North Miami Beach. Hi.
Hi. We haven't talked since September 11th, 2007, back when I had a full-time job.
And back when I had a full-time job. I guess we talked at WINZ when I was doing mornings there, when South Florida had a progressive talk station.
Back in the day. Yeah.
Back in the day.
Who knew those would be the good old days?
That's right. Yeah, you and I both. I guess we've been unemployed since then, huh?
Off and on.
Yep.
I think the movie title you're looking for is The High Cost of Low Prices.
You know what that is, The High Cost of Low Prices. You're right. You're absolutely right. That's what it's called.
I called because the best way to defeat ignorant racists is by voting both in the primary and in the general election, so that we get to choose our congressman and our governor.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. I got to tell you what happened on Wednesday night. I'm driving home. You know, I live in Coral Springs. Randy's studio is up in West Palm Beach, so I've got like a 45 to 50-minute drive home. So I'm driving home and I'm listening to XM, their Progress, their 127 channel, and Mark Thompson is on. He does a show from 6 to whenever at night, and he has my friend Susie Madrick on from Crooks and Liars every week, and she's a regular guest on my show too, at Radio or Not. And I turn on the radio and I hear them talking, and they're talking like, you know, you got to get out there and vote for Charlie Crist, even if you don't like him. You know, he's better than Rick Scott, and my blood starts boiling. So I called in You know, I'm like, it's Nicole from Florida, and we have a primary going on, and we have a real progressive running. They had no idea. Mark Thompson didn't know, and Susie Matrick, who's usually really informed, did not know. The primary is August 12th. We have a great progressive in Florida running, and the Democratic Party in Florida, I think, sold its soul so that Charlie Crist would endorse Barack Obama like anybody cared in 2012. And, you know, it's basically they're acting like it's already a done deal. Exactly. I'm sorry. Nan Rich she was a Florida state senator. She headed the Florida Democrats in the Senate until she was term limited out, and she's awesome. NanRich2014.com. NanRich2014.com is her website. And the primary's August 12th.
And if you can, look up her rebuttal to the State of the State address. It's brilliant. It's good stuff.
She's great.
Are we going to have to run around with, instead of a CB radio, an AM or FM transmitter on our cars and a bumper sticker showing what station we're broadcasting from? Because with terrestrial radio gone, and too many of us can't afford good satellite or full internet connections. We have to do something because...
Well, we need, you know what? We need public universal Wi-Fi, and the fact that we don't have it here in the United States is just another example of how we've fallen behind the rest of the world.
We're third world.
We are third world. And we should have public Wi-Fi, so you should be able to pick up my show at radioornot.com, which is internet only right now, anywhere. You can if you've got a smartphone, but again, that costs money. So once again, people who are hurting financially are left out in the cold. They've kicked us off the public airways, and you can only get us now online. It gives, in some ways, more freedom, but you know, the fact is, you got to have money to be able to listen. I don't charge, but you got to be able to pay for the, you know, the internet connection or the data on your cell phone if you listen via an app. You know, we just have to work harder. We've got to vote in November and be informed. So, yeah. David, thank you for calling. It's good to hear from you, and I hope you can get online and listen to my show over there and stay in touch, okay?
Back at you. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, Nicole for Randy. We'll take a break. More of your calls next. All right. Well, it's Nicole Sandler of RadioOrNot.com in for Randi Rhodes one last time today. She'll be back Monday. After the next break, we'll talk with Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist David K. Johnston about his new book about the Great Divide in America. But now let's get back to the phones. Elizabeth in San Mateo, California, listening on AM 910. Hi.
Hi. I enjoy when you're on.
Thank you.
I read a book called My Grandfather's Son, written by that Toad Thomas.
Oh, Clarence Thomas. Okay, you're a better woman than I.
Well, I'm a liberal, but I wanted to see what made his puny mind work.
Good for you.
So I read the book. It's not a long book, otherwise I'd have given it up. But it's very short. But,
all right.
He was a flaming liberal in college.
Really?
Yeah, I was really shocked. So I'm glad I read it because I found out a few things. And he married this black girl, and they had a son, and her family was wonderful to him, just wonderful. And he divorced her shortly thereabouts, and I think it was after, it's been a long time ago, I think it was after he got out of college, but anyway, he started getting out in the world of conservatism, and he saw which side his bread was buttered on.
Right, well, where the money is, right?
Where the money is. So then he, in the progress of becoming this conservative, he was at a conference or convention, whatever, and he met this white woman that
Ginny, his current wife, the one who lobbied, worked for a lobbying firm against the Affordable Care Act while he was hearing, while it was being legislated, and again during the Supreme Court challenge to the Affordable Care Act.
Very illegal.
Horrible.
And she is a big wheel in the Heritage Foundation as well. And I don't know that she was then, but she quickly right thereafter became that. Anyway. He shucked the black wife and the son, and got on with making money. And he sits up there like a toad, and he never says a thing. And he goes right along. The other four decide on these conservative things, and then he just rubber stamps it.
Yeah, right.
And he just amazes me, and I cannot. And I'm white.
Yeah.
I just cannot understand how he could be such an Oreo. It just amazes me.
It's terrible. And you know what? I applaud Congressman Thompson for saying what he did. And as an African American, he can. Okay,
and country.
It absolutely is. Yeah, and actually, you know, look, I said a few weeks ago when I was here, Clarence Thomas should have been impeached when it came out that you know, his wife had a blatant conflict of interest with his wife lobbying against the Affordable Care Act, and then on top of that, he didn't disclose her earnings on his financial disclosure forms. That is a blatant disregard for the bench, and he should have been impeached, and the Democrats should have impeached him. Now, somebody got mad at me because I said I wasn't sure how an impeachment of a Supreme Court justice works, if it works the same as impeaching a president. It does. It has to start in the House of Representatives. And you know what? The Democrats should have done it, and they didn't. The Democrats also should have acted against the Supreme Court when they decided to choose the president in 2000, because that is not anywhere in the Constitution, and they didn't. The Democrats need to, frankly, grow a spine and get tough. And you know what? If they're not tough, if they don't do the right things, we need to call them out on it. We need to push them hard to do what we want them to do, and let them know they're accountable to we the people, not the people with the big money.
You go, girl.
Thank you. You go, too. All right. Thanks. Yeah, and you know what? The way we do that is at the ballot box. So if you're not yet registered to vote, do it now. And if you have to jump through hoops, you have time if you start now. David K. Johnson next. Nicole for Randy.
Turn down the noise, turn up your mind with Randi Rhodes on Premier Radio Networks.
All right. Well, welcome back. Randy will be back on Monday for the final 2 weeks of this very program. I'm Nicole Sandler of RadioOrNot.com, and as always, honored to be sitting in this chair talking into this microphone, and honored to once again speak with our next guest. You know, we've been talking about the big news stories of the week, and actually what I'm going to discuss with David K. Johnston is the biggest issue, really, of our time. It is this divided country in which we live. You know, the ever-widening gap between the very rich and the rest of us. David K. Johnston is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist whose articles you can read all over at Al Jazeera, at Newsweek, National Memo, and others. His brand new book is adequately enough or appropriately enough entitled Divided: The Perils of Our Growing Inequality. And David, first of all, welcome back to the Randi Rhodes Show, and thank you for joining me today.
Well, Nicole, thank you for having me.
The book is actually a collection of articles that you've pulled together and edited from such, a few names that we've heard of, like Barack Obama, Elizabeth Warren, Jared Bernstein, David K. Johnston, and others that we don't know, but dealing with all aspects of this massive inequality that has really, that encompasses this nation right now.
Yeah, what I was trying to do, having written about this issue for years, was to give people a very broad understanding that it isn't just the numbers that I've been reporting for years, and listeners of the show have heard about, the widening gap between the 90% and the 1% of the 1%. Mm-hmm. That's the measures that really matter. But all the things that go into this, what it's doing to families, how it's led to wage theft by the biggest corporations in America, including Walmart, against their workers, how it has disrupted people's health, and how public health and health care, which are different things, have been affected by this. And for example, I think a lot of readers will be surprised to find out in a number of states, Minnesota, Arizona, and Washington among them, we now have resumed debtors' prison. We are arresting people who owe money for business reasons, and they generally get released when they post bail equal to the debts they owed, something that every other modern country wiped out about 1800, including the United States.
Right. So, in fact, like the book is divided into different sections. You have income inequality, education, healthcare inequality, and debt and poverty, policy, and family. And under the debt and policy heading, the first article in there is actually was taken from a three-part series from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, and it's entitled "Jailed for Being in Debt." And I'll tell you something. I read this piece, and my jaw dropped because, David, you just said that debtor's prison was outlawed here, a couple of centuries ago. So how are people going to jail for owing money?
Well, here's what the corporate bar, the business bar, has figured out to do. You bring an action against someone for a debt they can't pay. Then you get a court order against them because they failed to show up at a hearing, and then you use that to get the sheriff to go out and arrest you. And, we have better things for our law enforcement people to be doing than enforcing civil debts.
Mm-hmm.
We have a bankruptcy code. And bankruptcy is not new. In my class at Syracuse University College of Law and the Graduate School of Business, I teach how we had a form of bankruptcy 4,000 years ago under King Hammurabi in Sumeria. Not every loan that is taken out will be paid back, and lenders who take risks and charge interest rates to cover those risks should not be able to use the cops. And they shouldn't be able to do what we're also seeing some of. It's not in this book, but some, threats against people. Well, listen, if you don't pay this bill, we'll have you arrested and you're going to lose your children because we'll call, Child and Family Services on you. And this is just immoral and wrong, but I haven't seen any legislatures moving to correct the problem.
Right. And so, you tell some very specific, or this article tells some very specific stories of people like, somebody who had a $250 credit card bill, didn't have the money to pay it, and then, is arrested, saying, what am I being arrested for? I didn't break the law. Goes to jail and it winds up spending, 48 hours in jail before they are actually able to post bond, alongside of hardened criminals. I mean, this is...
Right. And in many of these cases, people are rousted out of bed or out of their homes. They don't call them up and say, listen, you need to come down to the police station. There's something to talk about. They get handcuffed in front of their kids because we've militarized our police. So instead of, assuming people will behave, we handcuff them behind their backs over issues like this. And this is causing disruption. It is breaking down social cohesion. And for what?
Right.
Over these small amounts of money. And in many cases, we're not talking about people who are some sort of scufflaws. We've just gone through a period that we haven't emerged from yet where there are far more people looking for work than there are jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So guess what? We're going to have problems. And many of these cases, by the way, Wall Street firms are financing the people who go to various businesses that have unpaid debts. They buy them up for pennies on the dollar. I mean, in some cases, literally, someone will buy a whole stack of debts and pay $1 for each one because they're considered worthless.
Right.
And then they go to court. I've looked at the records of someone who bounced an $84 check. They should have taken care of it, but they didn't. I'm not suggesting they should get out of it, but the court now has ordered payment of more than $3,000 because of court costs and interest. And they won't take anything less. The person has offered to settle for less. So, I advised the person who showed me these records. I said, you need to go file bankruptcy, and then they'll wipe out the debt completely.
Right, but if debtors' prisons were abolished in the U.S. in the 19th century, under what statute are people being arrested and thrown in jail?
Well, that's the trick, Nicole. What they do is they get a court proceeding, and you failed to show up for it. So they get a warrant because you failed to show up. The fact is, if you're having trouble paying your bills, you can't say, I don't want to look at another one of these notices and throw them in the trash, because you may end up getting arrested. You got to pay attention to them. I've talked to some people who courts refused to accept filings by them because they didn't have the filing fee. I'm sorry, the law is in every state of the union that if you can present that you're a pauper, that they have to take your filing. They may later say, no, we're going to make you pay the fee, but they have to accept a filing. But clerks who don't want to deal with this and have been told to hold down costs will often lie to people about this. and mislead them. Not all of them, just in those jurisdictions where judges don't care about this. But judges should be really offended that the judicial process is being used this way.
Yeah, they should. In this article, you have this example here. In Illinois and Southwest Indiana, some judges jail debtors for missing court-ordered debt payments. In extreme cases, people stay in jail until they raise a minimum payment. In January, a judge sentenced a Kenny, Illinois man to indefinite incarceration until he came up with $300 toward a lumberyard debt. Well, if he's incarcerated, how is he supposed to make that money?
Right, and because he's incarcerated, he can't even get refuge in bankruptcy court.
Right.
Now, let me tell you the other side of this. When Congress changed the bankruptcy law in either 2005 or 2006, here's one of the things they did. It used to be that your home could be protected in a bankruptcy. That's no longer true. If you file bankruptcy and you have equity in your home, the court can take your house from you. But if you own a second home, a vacation home, Congress protects your second home.
Oh, my God.
Now, what more do you need to know to understand that we are writing the rules for the rich against everybody?
Right. And David K. Johnson, let me ask you this. What role does the for-profit prison industry play in this now?
Oh, I think that's mostly part of another end of the system. But because we have gone to a for-profit prison industry, America has 5% of the world's population and 25% of the people behind bars.
Oh, God.
We didn't have this before the war on drugs started. We had about 0.2% of 1% of our population in prison. We now have close to 1%. And furthermore, when people get arrested, and if they have a drug conviction, often they can never find a decent job again for the rest of their lives.
Right.
Well, that serves to push down the wages paid by those employers who hire semi-skilled and unskilled labor. It is a way to use the legal system to help the owners of those kinds of businesses. They didn't ask for this, but that's the net effect of it. And so what we're doing is creating a society that the framers would be horrified by. President John Adams wrote that what would destroy America, he feared, was the rise of a business aristocracy in which farmers did not own their land, but they rented it, and workers did not own their tools, and that this business aristocracy would persuade people whose only income was wages to do whatever the business aristocrats wanted. That sort of sounds like what's going on now.
Sounds exactly like what's going on now.
So in Divided, which is, you got a high school education, you can read and understand this book. There's nothing technical about it.
Right.
I tried to pull together these 44 contributors with their insights into all the aspects of this, what it's doing to families and public health and education and debt and poverty. And, in Georgia, for example, is a chapter called the Georgia Hunger Games.
Yes.
And it's how the Georgia welfare officials went out of their way to make sure that children would not get food stamps. And people would not have access to food if they were out of work. And, just a day or two ago, one of the candidates for Congress or the Senate was out saying, that we shouldn't feed the animals.
That's it. I remember that. I've played that clip. And yes.
What an immoral perspective. I mean, we don't want to have food stamps.
Right.
We shouldn't need to have food stamps. We should have jobs and an economy designed to prevent them. But to the extent that we don't, you have to have this backup system. And the idea of compassionate conservatism has now been turned into let them starve.
Yeah, or let them eat cake, right? David K. Johnson is with us. This book is great, and again, it's a collection of articles that you pulled together and edited and put in the right category, and it's just there's so much great information here, and it's a snapshot of where we are now, and really, how we can fix things, but again, a warning that if we don't change things, things are going to get a whole lot worse. Now, let me ask you about a couple of things. One is the jobs report today. 288,000 jobs created last month, and the unemployment rate falls down to 6.3%. Is it as good as it sounds?
Well, we are recovering, and this is, I believe, the 50th consecutive month with growth in the private job sector, and the government employment has been down under Obama. We should be, however, way, way ahead of where we are. And we're not, because the House Republicans and to some degree the Senate Republicans refuse to do those things that will get the economy going. If in the economy economy is contracting, the last thing you should be doing is cutting government spending as well, throwing cops and school teachers out of work, because that just reduces the overall ability of people to buy goods and services. They're unwilling to restore the minimum wage. I don't talk about raising it. I talk about restoring it. Restoring it to the level it was when I was a minimum wage worker in 1966. They're not willing to do that. Well, if people only make $7.75 an hour, or in the case of restaurant workers, $2.13 an hour, and then they're supposed to get $7.75 of their tips, they don't have the capacity to buy goods and services.
Right.
If college students are in debt up to their eyeballs, every one of my law students and my graduate business students has $100,000 or more of student loans. Well, even if they get a good job as soon as they leave, they're not going to go out and buy a new car. They're not going to get a nice apartment. They're not going to buy a house. They're not going to start a family and buy all the furniture and stuff that you have to do once you start having a family, simply because they're in debt, because we cut public support for higher education, which means we have cut the investment in the future wealth of America. Why? Because if you follow the thinking of the Republicans led by Paul Ryan, the problem in America is the rich don't have enough. And you got to give the Republicans credit. At least they've shown through the Paul Ryan budget how they're going to get the rich more. You take it from the sick, the disabled, the elderly, and children.
Right. And they liken public assistance to help people get through the really hard times and get back on their feet to slavery. I mean, that's how it's just absolutely stunning.
It is absolutely out of touch. But why? These people are going to get reelected because they have created districts that are designed to keep these folks in office. And the only way to get them out of office is the 90% need to go vote. The reason Scott Walker is still the governor of Wisconsin is that the Koch brothers spent their money not just on ads like the unions did.
Yep.
They hired people to drive people to the polls.
Yep.
If you don't vote, then don't complain.
You know what? Right. Exactly. And on our side, we need to volunteer to drive people to the polls. We need to. Getting out the vote is the most important thing we can do right now because we need to vote these people out of office. David K. Johnston, this time just flew by, and there's so much more to talk about, both what's happening in this country and your book, Divided, The Perils of Our Growing Inequality. I know you're going to join me soon for a longer, extended, more in-depth conversation on my show at radioornot.com sometime in the next couple of weeks. So we'll get that set up. We'll let everyone know when that's going to be because this is really important. People have to understand what's going on. And I thank you for coming on. I thank you for the book.
Thank you.
Always great to talk with you. David K. Johnston. There's a link to his book and all the information at randyrhodes.com. All right. The rest of the show is all yours. Phone lines are open. 866-87-RANDY, 866-877-2634. Everything is fair game. Anything you want to ask about the show, you want to talk about, a fun memory of Randy's show, you want to talk about inequality in America, it's anything you want. I'm here, I'm just here for you. Nicole for Randy. We'll be right back. Well, Randy will be back Monday. You got me, Nicole Sandler of RadioOrNot.com. It's my last time filling in for Randy, but you can always catch me over there, and I hope you will. All right. I said anything goes. Phone lines are open. It's all you. So where are we starting? Line 6. We'll go to Mike in Los Angeles, listening on iHeartRadio. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Nicole. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Good. It's good to hear you.
Thanks.
I wanted to talk about something that was kind of brought up a little earlier from one of your earlier callers, which is the problem with voting in this country. I mean, for me, I don't know. I grew up here in L.A., and here in L.A., for some reason, a lot of my friends, a lot of my peers I grew up with were just, throughout my entire life, more or less very indifferent or apathetic about anything political. And for some reason, whenever I ask them, like, well, did you go vote? They'll complain about all these same things that we're complaining about. Income inequality,
right.
The political alienation, all of this stuff that's going on that's really kind of hindering and not really letting us have any progression in this country. And yet they just still choose to remain really apathetic or indifferent about everything. And I just can't figure out for the life of me what to do to kind of get people turned on.
Yeah,
I mean,
you know what you need to do? Here's what you need to do. You need to figure out what issue is affecting them the most and go there. Right. For instance, I'll tell you, I have a sister who happens to be a teacher, all right? And she's apathetic. I'll tell you, I was at her house once. She was watching some stupid reality show. I'm like, let's just turn on the news. And she's like, I don't want to watch that. It's so depressing. You know, you need to find, but education is her issue. So you need to find things about that and say, look what they're doing and look what we're trying to do. You know, you got it takes work, but hey, everything is at stake here. Everything,
especially this November coming.
Yes. And you know what? Every election is the most important election of our life. But you know, with these midterms, Democrats historically do not turn out for the midterm elections. Well, that's got to change this time, or the Republicans get control of the Senate, and then all bets are off.
Right, but what is it with the meh attitude in America? I mean, is it the government's fault? Is it like a
you know, if you listen to a right winger, it's all the government's fault. Nicole for Randy. We'll continue on the other side.
Radio Networks.
I have never made any kind of political statement, and I won't do it today.
Really?
This is not what we're here for, to talk about who we elect and, parties and all that. We just don't do that. That's not what the National Day of Prayer is all about.
Agreed.
But something we are all about is morality.
Huh?
And there has been an issue that has come up that you need to know about. President Obama, before he was elected, made it very clear that he wanted to be the abortion president.
What?
He didn't pull any... he didn't make any bones about it. That
really?
This is something that he really was going to promote and support. And he has done that.
Are you kidding me? All right. So that is James Dobson, founder of Focus on the Family. For some ridiculous reason, yesterday was National Prayer Day. Why we have a National Prayer Day, I don't know. But this just shows the religious hypocrisy that is rampant in those circles. James Dobson says, I don't believe this National Prayer Day. It's not the place for politics. I never make a political statement. I'm not going to do a new one now, but Obama's the abortion president. That's what's wrong with those people. As our friend John Fugelsang says, it's, these religious zealots, it's like, Elvis Presley, love the artist, the fan clubs kind of creep me out. Same thing. The hypocrisy is just stunning. One of my favorite subjects. And yes, why we have a National Day of Prayer, I don't know, but it happened. I couldn't let that go by without commenting on it. So here we go. Nicole Sandler in for Randi Rhodes.
Remember, prayer happens every single day in every school across America as every student goes, oh, God, please, not an F, not an F, not an F.
And you know what? Prayer, you should pray however you want, wherever you want. It's a private thing, right? It's not something you do in public. Do it your own way. And if somebody doesn't want to pray, that's okay. Yeah. All right. Again, as I was saying, welcome back. It is hour 3 of the Friday edition of the Randi Rhodes Show. I'm Nicole Sandler. I've been doing this, filling in for Randy now for 4.5 years. And again, it has been just a privilege and an honor every time I come in here to talk with you, Randy's precious listeners. And it's an honor that she trusts me with this. And it's an honor that you listen and want to interact and talk about the things that are so important. Look, they are the powers that be out there, and that would be the money people, right? We know the curtain's pulled back. We know what it's all about. The more money you have in this country, the more power you have. Money doesn't equal speech, but money does equal power. And but you know what? We still have power. We have the power of the vote. We do have the power also of numbers because there are more of us than there are of them. And if we mobilize, we can't let them do this to us anymore. But you got to stay involved. You got to stay active. You got to stay engaged. And although this show is going away, sadly. I hope you'll join me at radioornot.com. I'm just one voice, but I promise you I will keep what Randi does alive. All right. And as I've said before, and I said it to Randi and I'll say it to you, she may want to go away and take a break for a few months, but I don't think Randi's going to want to stay silent for too long. And if no other company is really smart and hires her, she always has an open microphone at radioornot.com to come on my show, to do her own show, to check in once in a while, to come on every day, whatever she wants. And I promise you, I will keep nudging her in that direction. I'll stop short of pestering her, but I will keep extending the invitation because I think her voice is that important. We need it. We need to hear from her. So that's a promise I make to you. All right, let's go to the phones because I know a lot of you want to weigh in. Chris in Oakland, California, listening on AM 910. We'll start with you. Hi.
Hi, Nicole. I feel like what you just said is so right on, and it fits with my comment and my question very well.
Okay.
Because we're going to miss the Randi Rhodes program because it is a very important truth-telling outlet. It's an amazing program, and there's almost nothing else like it.
Yeah.
But I teach at the community college level in Oakland, California. I teach a media literacy unit, information media. My students have given up already. They're only 19 or 20 years old, most of them. They've already given up on watching the news or reading the newspaper because they feel like they're being misled. And I mostly agree. Most corporate-sponsored media in this country is misleading the people of this nation largely through selection and emphasis, not through lying, but through selection and emphasis and what they deselect and de-emphasize. And the Randi Rhodes show, like, it's amazing that it's a commercially sponsored show. I can name a lot of the corporate sponsors, actually, from listening over the years.
Right.
And it's one of the very few commercially sponsored programs that I would call real journalism.
Right.
I include the Tom Hartman program, which you used to be able to hear in the Bay Area, and the Norman Goldman show, which you used to be able to hear in the Bay Area.
Yep.
Moyers and Company, which has a kind of hybrid corporate sponsorship. Bill Moyers is awesome. He's maybe the last
he's great.
At PBS.
I agree.
And then in the Bay Area, we have a lot of non-commercial radio.
Yeah.
Most of which is available nationwide online. DemocracyNow.org.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your Call Radio, which is yourcallradio.org. Rose Aguilar at KALW. It's awesome.
Right. Okay.
Letters in Politics is one of the.
You know what we should do? Instead of running these all down here because a lot of people are out and about and can't write them down. If you go to RandiRhodes.com on the Randi Rhodes message board, post them there. And you know what? We just started a new message board at RadioOrNot.com modeled after the Randi Rhodes message board, and you can post it there too because I'm hoping.
I'm definitely going to follow you to. I'm going to be a big listener now on your show because I'm going to miss Randi so much.
Well, thank you. But if you post those links and those shows on those message boards, it'll help other people because it'll be right there and they can always find it.
I'd love to. I know this might be weird because it's kind of crossing the streams of one outlet promoting others or something. I don't know. But with Randi disappearing, a lot of us are looking for other options and good programming and good information. I wonder. I'm suggesting, I guess, over the next couple of weeks, maybe she could give us some recommendations. And you just had a great investigative journalist, David K. Johnston, on, whose book is remarkably similar in its title to Matt Taibbi's new book, Divide.
Right.
And I totally respect your opinion, too, and I wonder if you might share some of your recommendations of the voices or the outlets that we ought to be tuning into because they tell the truth.
Right.
And, I pipe down.
Right. Okay. You got it. And I will do that. And right now again because people can't write them down so fast, I will post them on both message boards. But the first place I'll invite you to come over to RadioOrNot.com because again I do a live show there Monday through Thursday, 10 to noon Eastern. May change the time, who knows? But for now, that's where we are. And it's always podcast. It's always free, and it's in video form. It's in audio form. I put a blog up with a player. All you have to do is press play if you're technologically, not advanced. Or you can download the podcast. Subscribe via iTunes. However you want to listen, it's easy. Sean, you want to
remember we did the segment earlier this week, and I will write it up and put it on HTML and obviously put it at randyrhodes.com, and then we'll share it with you, so you can post it at radioornot.com about how we do the homework, so you can take a look at some of those. You can basically go down the list, and the New York Times, the Washington Post, yes, but also some of the great aggregators like the Plum Line, the Wonk Blog, and then of course some great writers: David K. Johnston, Joan Walsh, John Nichols, Michael Tomasky, Erin Carmone, the people who we depend on. So all of that, we'll put it up at randyrhodes.com over the weekend, and of course give it to you as well, Nicole, so you can post it at Radio or Not.
Great. I will. And I'll be doing my own version of the homework each day to post, because I do the prep anyway for my show. I'm a one-woman show over there. Randy has a great staff here. At my place, I do it all myself. So it's a little more informal. And by the way, because the show is online, you get kind of all this stuff and a bit of the potty mouth too, because I do that. Just not over the air. Anyway, Joel in Monterey Park, California, listening on iHeartRadio. Hi, you're on the Randy Rhodes Show with Nicole.
Hi, I know you're running out of time, so I'll just make this quick. My question was for the staff. I was wondering what was going to happen to them, if they were going to be okay, because when she, earlier this year, when she made the switch, a lot of them gave up positions.
Yeah, they did. Here's Sean.
I can answer for some of us.
In order to stay on with
right.
it. I was just wondering what was going to happen.
I can answer for some of us, Joel. And we appreciate that. We know you guys really appreciate everybody here. Beowulf, myself, Tammy,
who's
Duffy,
out today, right?
Right, Duffy, and of course Bruce, who helps write the comedy bits with Duffy. We all do a lot of work. Arthur also assists me with some web stuff. We're all obviously looking. We've got some opportunities, although if anybody wants to throw large piles of money our way, that's fine.
Yeah.
I do know that Duffy still is the production director, I believe, at WGN Radio in Chicago,
right.
And you'll be able to hear his work. He does voiceover work, so if you're anywhere in the country, oftentimes you may hear a voice. If you say, man, that sounds just like Duffy, it
probably is.
Probably is.
Right.
I know Bruce will be doing some more writing work up in New York City, and we appreciate that. I know Tammy's working on getting a position out in L.A., and Beowulf and I are pretty much looking for anything, and we've got a few opportunities, but know that we are all going to do everything we can, and of course that's why we've been working with Nicole to make sure that she's able to help you take some of the community and help you work with each other.
And maybe you guys will post updates over on the new message board at radioornot.com, because unfortunately, thank you for the call, Bruce. I appreciate it. We don't know exactly when, but sometime after the show on Friday, May 16th. randyrhodes.com is going to go down. They're going to take it away. And so what we've done is I had a wonderful listener volunteer, Liberty. It basically copied the Randy Rhodes message board program and put it up at radioornot.com. It's there. It's running. Come on over, register. And Sean and Beowulf, when you guys know what's going to happen next, post there. Stay in touch.
Absolutely.
I want Randy's community to be able to continue, and so you have a place to post and to commiserate and to chat. The chat room actually at radioornot.com is open. There are people in there right now, so come on over and get a feel for it. All right, we'll take a break, come back with more of your calls at 866-87-RANDY, 866-877-2634. Nicole Sandler in for Randy Rhodes. All right, it is Nicole Sandler in for Randy Rhodes for one final time. I'm thrilled Randy's going to be back Monday and here for the next 2 weeks. I know I'll be listening every day, as I know you will, it's bittersweet. We're taking your calls. That's what we're doing at 866-87-RANDY. So let's go right back to him. Tom in San Bruno, California, listening on AM 910. Hi.
Oh, it's good to hear you again. I'm sorry Randy's going away. I will have to go to my public library and listen to you on radio, not on your site, and I'll visit your site as much as possible. I need to keep getting the truth, because the Republicans, and I said this at a union meeting because I'm a union member in my union, and I told everybody in the meeting, you need to get out and vote. You cannot stay home. If you need to vote absentee, do it, whatever you got to do, because they want to come after everything that is good, and including the pensions I've earned and everything I've earned in my life. And they're using this Benghazi and all this stuff because they're being told this
by the Koch brothers. I think the Koch brothers and the Adelsons are giving them a call every day, or their flunkies are telling them what to say and how to say it.
Yep.
Because that is considered fascism. Okay, but let's be frank.
Yeah.
Back in 1947, I forget who said that when you mix government with capital as a private, you have fascism. Government has a role to play, such as roads and schools and infrastructure and our military and public service and parks. And, private enterprise or capitalism has something to do with service and industry, and it has a role to play. But when the roles went to intersect in each other, especially after Citizens United and McCutcheon, I hate to tell you, everything that I served in my military, I served for 22 years, 20 years I was a reservist, and I got a pension. But everything that I worked hard for, especially being in uniform, it makes it a slap in the face.
I hear you. No, I call it opposite world, because everything is almost the opposite as it should of how it should be. I thank you for the call. That's why it's so important that you get out and vote in November. And if you're not registered yet, don't wait any longer, because in many states they're throwing up roadblocks left and right. Remember, they don't want you to vote. So do what you need to do. If you need someone to drive, if you need to take a half a day off work and get a ride to the DMV to get that state-issued ID, you need to do it, and do it now. Don't wait till the last minute. Kathy in Norwalk, California. Hi.
Hi, Nicole. I've been a long-time listener since the Air America days, first-time caller.
Oh, wow.
But I wanted to say, you go, girl. I will listen to you on your podcast.
Thank you.
I was born in 53, so I'm 60.
Okay.
I grew up during the 60s, but I lived in L.A. County.
Mm-hmm.
I was aware of all the things that went on during that time against the African-American community, and also the Latinos in high school. And it's really sad. People use a subtle racism.
Oh, yeah.
And I've experienced throughout my life what I call a microaggression, where people will be impressed by the way I talk or that I can write very well. I've even been told, why don't you go back where you came from? Well, I was born and raised in California. Both my parents were born and raised in
That's
California.
where you came from.
My father was a laborer. He belongs to the union still. He's 89. My mother, unfortunately, passed away 3 years ago, but she, too, belonged to a union. I say we have to fight the good fight. We do have a voice, but if we don't vote, we lose our voice.
That's right.
And many times people vote against their own best interest. So, and then I heard May 1st was the National Day of Prayer. Well, I pray at home. But May 1st, yesterday, especially in L.A. County, I don't know if you heard about it where you're at, it was the day of the worker, the laborer.
Right. Well, that's how we celebrate it here. Although in Seattle yesterday it turned ugly.
Yeah.
But
they're voting for equal pay.
Yes.
I mean, I can't believe it.
Exactly.
And it's also the day in Latin America, it's El Día del Niño, the day of the child. So instead of their being pro-life, but once the child is born, they don't want to take care of it.
Well, that's it. Love the fetus, hate the child, but they don't even really love the fetus because they don't want to give pregnant women access to health care, right? They want to take that away. Kathy, you hit the nail on the head.
Well, I'm sad. I know that there will be other venues, and we just have to keep on fighting. Don't give up. Don't give up.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll see you over at Radio or Not. All right, let's keep going. 866-87-RANDY. Dale in San Mateo, California. Hi.
Hi. Again, being rushed again.
Sorry.
I'll try to listen to your show while switching to Stephanie. I'd like to recommend, I've been listening to you since the Air America days.
Wow.
I'm sorry you're leaving. I'd like to recommend, once again, a book by my former middle school classmate. It's called A President from Hawaii, written by Joanna and Dr. Terry Carolan, and it talks about why President Obama is the way he is, thanks to how he grew up back home in Honolulu, how he got his ideas about multiculturalism and
All right, and you can post these things, all these recommendations as well, on both message boards at randyrhodes.com and at radioornot.com. Thank you for the call, Dale. I'm sorry I rushed you. More of your calls coming up. Nicole for Randy. Well, Randy will be back on Monday for to head into the final stretch of the Randi Rhodes Show. I'm Nicole Sandler, I guess, in the final stretch of guest hosting the Randi Rhodes Show. And I got to tell you, it's been just a thrill and an honor for the past 4.5 years. All right, more of your calls at 866-87-RANDY as I tear up here. Not going to do that. Joe in Long Beach, California, listening on iHeartRadio. Hi.
Hi, Nicole. How are you? I'm burning up here in Long Beach. We're in the 90s.
Oh, boy. And you have no water there anymore,
yeah,
you know.
No water.
Yeah, no water.
Anyway, you know, I heard just a few weeks ago that Randi is leaving us, and I'm still in disbelief. I've been listening to her for quite a while, and I've also been listening to you, and I just kind of want to thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
You kept us informed, and I'm going to be moving to Albuquerque. By midsummer, I'm joining my partner there who's been there a year. He works for the VA hospital.
Okay.
And I know they have a progressive talk radio there, but where else do we go to, get information?
Online. Look, the public airwaves, their airwaves are the people. It's the public. Radio companies do not own the frequency on which they broadcast. They have licenses to broadcast. And as I was telling you the other day, there used to be strict restrictions. I mean, these companies had to prove. They had to, when they were up at license renewal time, they had to prove that they were operating in the public interest, convenience, and necessity. That's the exact wording. And they had to do all kinds of things to show how they were serving the community to which they were licensed. And now all that's gone. And that's why you're able to hear lies and blatant bigotry and racism on the airwaves. You're able to hear one voice and one viewpoint only. Right. It's really sad. Right now, this is why the fight for net neutrality is so important, because right now the my little show at radioornot.com is delivered at the same speed as, NBC News or Fox so-called news, as their websites are. And of course, now they're trying to change that. That's why it's so important to make sure that you're fighting for our rights to be heard. Because I'm sorry, they may say money equals speech, but until speech equals money, until I can pay my tax bill or pay my mortgage with speech, then I'm sorry, money doesn't equal speech. Because if money equals speech, then speech should equal money, and obviously it doesn't.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. And here in the LA market, I don't think Patriot Station is doing very well.
No, they're not. And in fact, there's been some press on that lately. They're failing miserably.
There's a story on that, by the way, in the
homework section.
Today. Right.
The homework section at Randi Rhodes. Thank you so much. I appreciate the call,
Joe,
Sean.
By the way, Joe, I know that he's moving to Albuquerque, and one of our newer affiliates there, Power Talk 1210. They've been great affiliates. It's something that I would advocate. It actually kind of goes along with one of the emails you asked earlier in the week, Nicole.
Yes.
For people to email in as well, and I'll just say N. Nevado is his name.
Okay.
And he says, Dear Sean, I heard the show was going off the air, and I heard you explain the other day how Team Randi generates the homework page. I know it seems easy, but it's more complicated than you think. That's long and short what he's saying. And he says, would you be opposed to doing the homework for free for Nicole or for somebody else every day?
Huh.
And
the doing it for free is the problem. This is what we do. I've been working for free over at radioornot.com for years. Somebody just asked me online on Twitter, when did you start radioornot.com? Well, you know what? I started it years ago to post some of my old music interviews from my music radio days.
Right.
But I started doing my show daily there on January 21st, 2010. That was the day Air America Radio went off the air. So, my show is supported entirely by listener donations. I would take advertising, but honestly, I'm a one-woman show. I do everything, and I don't go out and sell.
Well, that's the media environment that we live in. And for N. Nevado and for anybody else who's listening, what I would recommend is you have to understand. It used to be that you could be well-informed and well-educated, and you didn't have to worry about it. They weren't attacking our public schools and trying to steal the money and put them into private schools.
Right.
And you could go to work, you could go to the coffee shop, you could read 3 different newspapers. You could read the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post for free because people just had them around and that was fine. But that's not the media model that we live in today. So if the Supreme Court is saying that your money equals give a damn, it equals whether you care or not, then put your money where your mouth is. If you like Nicole, donate to her. If you like people like Tom and Stephanie, donate to free speech. You know, buy T-shirts. You've got some cool ones up now at Radio
I got some stuff. And look, I also have I've got a link at a whole search thing at radioornot.com for Amazon.com. So if you shop on Amazon, use the link at radioornot.com.
And support your local affiliates. Your progressive affiliates out there. 92.1 The Mic, Power Talk 1210, AM 910. I mean, all of our fantastic affiliates across the country. Look, they want you to be listening anyway, and their advertisers want you to be listening. So call them.
Right.
Talk to
Well,
them.
you got to support the advertisers. You really do, because they are actually, look, so many of them pulled out with the whole boycott rush thing. They just said no advertising on any controversial stations, no political talk at all. It didn't hurt them. It hurt us. So those advertisers who advertise on the local stations, show them you appreciate them doing it. And then what I was saying before, if you use Amazon, go through my site, and I get a small commission off of each sale through there. I know that a lot of people can't contribute money. Times are tough. Believe me, I know firsthand. But there are ways to support us by doing what you already do. In that case, shopping Amazon, just do it through the portal at radioornot.com. That helps support my show. All right, 866-87-RANDY, 866-877-2634. Donna in Jupiter, Florida, just up the street from us, really, listening on WBZT. Hi.
Hi. Well, first of all, I really appreciate you. Have listened to your show, and we'll do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm one of those technically challenged people.
Okay. Well, I will help you. But if you have a computer, I'll tell you the easiest way to do it. Each afternoon, my show ends at 12. So each afternoon, I write a blog post that just talks a little bit about the show, sort of like, on Randy's site. But I also embed a player right at the top of each blog post. All you have to do is hit the play button, and it'll just play through the speakers on your computer. So it's so easy. There's also like a YouTube embed, because back from the Air America days, some of the listeners talked me into just simulcasting on YouTube. On Ustream. Now I'm on Ustream and YouTube. So there's a video there. On the website, you could just press play and it'll play.
Okay. And Randi.
Yes.
Is so brilliant.
Yes, she is.
And so logical.
Uh-huh.
And so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
That, I hope she comes back.
I hope she does, too.
And I worry about why she's going. I know she says she's going to something. But, I think, oh, my God, are they threatening her? Or is something wrong with her family?
No, nothing's wrong with her family. Look, all I know is what she said and what I observe from coming into her studio when I'm honored, when I'm able to fill in for her. And I know that it's been tough. I know that, look, a lot of the progressive talk stations around the country have been taken off the air. Many of them, most of them, by the company that syndicates this show. And so, look, speaking for me, if I was in her position, what I've seen over the course of the last year is that it almost seems like she's been set up to fail. They're saying here, we're going to let you keep going, but, your show is really, except for, I don't know how many affiliates she's down to, but I would say it's in, maybe the 20s. So, we're not going to put you on a lot of stations, but we'll put you on iHeartRadio, and we're not going to sell any commercials on iHeartRadio. So it's almost like they're saying here, we're going to let you keep going, but we're not going to give you the tools to succeed, but we're going to dare you to do so anyway. And it's hard to succeed when your hands are tied and you feel like the company that you're working for isn't behind you. Now, again, let me just say straight out, this is what my speculation based on what I've observed. Randi never said that. What Randi has said is it was her choice. what I think is possibly it was her choice because she's not being given the tools she needs to do it right. And one thing you know from Randi is if she's going to do it, she's going to damn well do it.
The hookies out the door, registering everybody we can, giving rides.
Yep.
And getting out the vote.
Absolutely. You know, there are Democratic clubs. Thank you for the call. There are Democratic clubs in every town, in every city. Find one. Join it. Go. Show up. Learn how to volunteer, to help register people. Learn how to volunteer to drive people to the polls. Be a poll worker. They need poll watchers so that, you can see if they're trying to turn away people, that they don't want to vote. You need to be involved. You need to vote, but actually right now you need to do more than just vote. Scott in Ithaca, New York, listening WNYY. Hi.
Hey, Nicole, I was the guy who accidentally called your cell phone one time. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that.
I do. It's like, how did you get this number? Okay, that's weird.
In there, and I had Randy's name in there, and I thought I was calling Randi Rhodes, whatever.
Okay. You thought you were calling Randy's cell phone.
I don't know who. I thought I was calling her show, actually, because I was probably naughtily pulled over to the side of the road and whatever.
All right. I don't know how you got my cell, but okay. It's out there, I guess.
It might have been online, some number or something. Anyway, so I have a lot to say, but I'm going to make it concise. Okay. I think there is a real deficit. You mentioned the whole thing about getting to the Democratic clubs and all these things, and I'm on a Democratic committee here, too. I'm a Democrat. I consider Bernie Sanders sort of a pseudo-Democrat. The problem is we don't have enough real Democrats. We have too many corporate Democrats.
Yeah, we don't have enough progressives is what it is.
There aren't enough real progressives.
Yep.
And as you know, I tried to run once for U.S. Senate, but I was like, they shivered like at the thought of me running against Kirsten Gillibrand because she's bought and paid for by all the corporate.
Although I'll tell you what, since she got into the Senate, she's been really good. I've been impressed with her.
But
I
you
have
to dissect the bills. You have to dissect the bills. It's a slap. Like even the current minimum wage bill is a slap in the face to women because why aren't we raising the minimum wage in 2014 and this stupid? Wait until 2015, 2016, 2017.
Well, but that's how they do it. Look, Scott, but that's how they do it, and one person can't change. Look, if it means that they're going to get it by the end of the decade, great. As it is right now, the Republicans in the Senate filibustered the vote to open debate on it. If they won't even talk about it, you're going to get nothing done.
But there's different amendments to that bill.
Okay, but let me tell you something else. You can't, and I hate this phrase because it's been used on me a million times, but you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Bernie Sanders, who was on the show yesterday, who I adore, Bernie Sanders voted for that farm bill that cut food stamps by another $8 billion. It's sickening. And you know what? Nobody is going to be perfect to do what we want 100% of the time. That's part of the game of Washington.
When you take Sally Mae PAC money, you're not going to be for
All right, Scott, I don't even want to do this today, but thank you for the call. I got to go. Too many people want to weigh in, and I don't want to get in that argument. I know he wanted to run for Senate. Kirsten Gillibrand happens to be one of the really good members of the U.S. Senate. And again, if we wait for perfection, we're going to be waiting out in the cold our whole lives. When somebody does something right, we need to embrace them, especially when we're fighting evil, and it is evil on the right. All right, one more break until sadness for me, but gladness that we still have 2 more weeks of Randi Rhodes. So we'll come back, take more of your calls, and wrap this baby up. Nicole Sandler for Randi Rhodes.
If we don't talk about it, who will? You're listening to Randi on Premier Radio Networks.
Oh, it is Nicole Sandler in for Randi Rhodes. All right, let's grab at least one more. David in San Francisco, listening on AM 910. Hi.
Hey, hi, Nicole. Tell me again, what was that website that we want to go to listen to your show?
It is radioornot.com. By the way, there's one other thing, too. I do, voiceover work. I've done other things. And for people who, want to see other things that I can do or have done, I do have NicoleSandler.com. That's more of a, a sort of a resume, because I am looking for paying work. So there's that.
Sure, good.
But thank you for asking.
Yeah, no trouble. Two things. I wanted to talk about the National Day of Prayer.
Yeah.
A minute ago you had a fella talking about the structure of fascism. And if you look at it, the fascists basically want taxation without representation. That's their big scam.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you look at the way the tax laws are being structured, where the super rich are claimed to be so important that they shouldn't pay taxes, and the poor are so unimportant that not only are they the ones that are supposed to pay taxes, but they're the ones that are supposed to not get anything for them. So the whole issue of taxation without representation is the big scam, that they have figured out a way to basically create a master race that are so important that they don't pay taxes. But the National Day of Prayer, of course, yesterday, these scammers, you've probably kept up with both Rachel Maddow and I'll think of her name. They were both doing a big thing on the National Day of Prayer tied with the family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, Jeff Charlotte, yeah. Jeff Charlotte's been on my show many times, and will again.
Well, the National Day of Prayer is that.
Yes, I know. It's the family. And Hillary Clinton is also, a member, just so you know.
Right. And so they're the merchants in the temple. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that Jesus was complaining about.
Yeah, I hear
fat cats that have come into the world claiming that they're chosen of God, that they get all of everything, that we get nothing. And so now they've usurped the actual prayer.
Yeah.
They are the ones in this master race position to tell us what a prayer is, or to tell us
what religion they should be practicing. Yeah, no, I hear you. And this is why it's so important that people are informed, and that they keep talking about these things rather than just accepting it as that's the way things are. David, thank you for the call. Appreciate it. And
up on the LIBOR scandal.
You got it. Thank you. We got to keep up on everything, all right. One more quick one. Make it real quick. Ann in Santa Monica. Hi.
Hi, Nicole. He's the perfect person for me to follow because of the actual Boston Tea Party. They did what they did because, again, we were unrepresented by government. And it was the British government that didn't represent us. They tried to control us. Okay, so back to the Boston Tea Party, the current people who call themselves the Tea Party, I
don't have any clue. They don't know. Yeah. Well, they're ignorant fools. That's what it is. They don't know what the Tea Party was about. They don't even know what they're out protesting. Most of them. Some of them, I guess, do.
What they have done is recreate government that does not represent the people.
Right. I hear you. And that's what they're for. They're anti-government. In fact, the original Tea Parties wanted government who's going to represent them. These people don't want government. I guess they should move to Somalia. I got to run. We are out of time. Randi will be back Monday. I cannot thank her enough. I will be listening very closely in the next 2 weeks, as I know you will. Please, I invite you to join me at radioornot.com. Use the message board to keep Randi's community going. And I can't thank Randi enough for the work, for the opportunity, for the trust that she's given me over the last 4.5 years. And I thank you guys for being so kind to me when I've been in for her. I know, you turn on the radio, you want Randi, and you get me, and sometimes it's a disappointment. But you've been so wonderful, and I can't thank you enough. So, we'll say till next time, all right? And a big thank you to Randi, to Randi's great staff. You guys are the best. Sean, Beowulf, Tammy, and you listeners, thank you. Nicole Sandler, Radio or Not.
The Premier Radio Networks.